Hi everyone and welcome to Green Drinks. I'm very excited to be here and I hope you are too. Just for a little housekeeping, if you could put your phones on silent or turn them off, that'd be appreciated. Also, the toilets are just down this way, so you'll have to get past us if you need to go to the toilet during the presentation. I'll give you an outline of what to expect for this evening. Each of our speakers will speak for 10 minutes. After which we'll have a brief Q&A and then some drinks, so stick around afterwards. So the whole formal part should go for about an hour. I wanted to let you know that Perth Green Drinks is not associated with the Greens Party. We're actually an independent, self-organizing network of people that like to get together and talk about issues relating to sustainability. These nights could not be possible without the support of our sponsors, which include Little Creatures, who provide the beverages this evening. Also Central Institute of Technology, who provide the venue, and food? Are we having food? We're having food. Specifically from Central, I'd like to thank Leanne Pereira, Kenley Gordon, Jamie McAway, and Neil Fernandez. And of course, this night would not be possible without all the effort put in by the volunteers, including Ali on camera, Hannah, Lorca, Margie, Kathleen, and our volunteer coordinator, Flavia.
And Susan.
And me, I'm Susanna. I do this part. Tonight's theme is about renewable energy. And I don't think anyone would argue that energy is important. Australia is one of the most carbon-intensive economies in the world. We have huge renewable potential due to our solar and wind resources, as well as a pool of intellectual capital and knowledge of the industry. The current government, however, scrapped the carbon tax, and with it goes part of the incentive to invest in renewable energy. In addition to that, the government is reviewing the renewable energy target, a policy designed to ensure that at least 20% of Australia's energy comes from renewables by 2020. The annual cost of subsidies to renewables is about $1.5 billion per year, while fossil fuel industries receive about $4.5 billion annually in subsidies. This is a crucial moment for Australia in regards to renewable energy, as the rest of the world moves from centralized and carbon-intensive schemes to new arrangements where customers and communities are able to take control of their electricity. With so much at stake when it comes to renewable energy, we have an expert panel to help you all make more sense of this. We've got Kirsten Rose. She's the outgoing Chief Executive of the Sustainable Energy Association of Australia, a body that promotes the development and adoption of renewable energy. We have Jamie Ally, a Director of Engineering at Energy Made Clean and a Director of the Fremantle Wind Farm Cooperative. We also have Cameron Power. He's the Chair of Sustainable Energy Now, an organization working to raise awareness of how renewable energy technologies are able to meet all of WA's energy needs. I'll introduce our first speaker in more detail. We have Kirsten Rose. She's the outgoing Chief Executive of the Sustainable Energy Association of Australia. This is a body that represents over 250 members and promotes the development and adoption of renewable energy. Previously, Kirsten worked as Business Development Manager for Carbon Neutral, and she has run her own sustainability consulting business. Please join me in welcoming Kirsten.
Susan, I appreciate that introduction. Get my timer up. I've already, in full disclosure, told them I'm going to go more than 10 minutes. So, but I'll try to keep it. As close to time as I possibly can. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I am the outgoing CEO of the Sustainable Energy Association, and I'm really, really pleased to be able to join you today. I'm looking forward to this enormously. And Susan's already given you a bit of an introduction to us. Oh, you see, Jamie? There we go. An introduction to us, so I won't belabor the point, but I will just say that we have about 250 member businesses as part of the SEA. who are all united by a common interest in renewable energy, sustainable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable products and services. And our members represent all aspects of the value chain, from small renewable operators all the way up through large industrial users like BHP and Wesfarmers. We're based here in Perth, and although we are a national organization, we really focus on issues in WA, and that's probably where I'll spend a fair amount of my time tonight. Oops. I can't get this right. Sorry, I had this problem with the last presentation. I did too. This is a slide that shows our corporate members, who are our members that choose to support the association at a higher level. And as you can see, it's a very broad cross-section of industry. Renewable energy companies comprise about 35% of our membership, which is the largest segment, but it's by no means the majority. The rest are made up of companies that work in the built environment, energy efficiency, government, education and training, transport, utilities, and energy retail. And we've spent quite a lot of time recently looking at what we're here to do and how we do it, and our vision. And we very clearly believe that at SEA, the future of energy is and must be renewable and sustainable. But at the same time, we are a business chamber, and one that has always taken a very strong view that market-based policies are preferable because we believe that businesses respond most effectively to price signals in a competitive environment. So our vision at SEA is to accelerate the transition that we believe is inevitable to a new sustainable energy economy. And I'll be very clear too that the reason for our existence is the significant risk, that climate change poses to our society. And we believe that industry must be part of the solution. I'd like to frame my talk today a little bit with a quote, because this one really struck a chord with me, and some of you have seen this before. But Michael Liebrecht, who's the CEO of Bloomberg New Energy Finance, said recently, "In 2014, the tables will turn. Change will be the default assumption, and it will be up to the proponents of orthodoxy to argue why they disagree." And I really couldn't agree more. Change is now the default assumption, and the challenge for business is how to craft a strategy in an environment where change is the only reality. So I think we have an incredibly exciting opportunity to proactively influence the course of events over the coming years, because we are front and center of this colossal transformation that's happening in energy. And although this might seem incredibly obvious, the first point I'd like to make is that energy is extremely political, and it has become more so as climate change has become a more pressing economic threat. So energy is, by definition, humanity's most basic source of power. And since politics is really ultimately a contest over power, it follows that energy would become political. And it just gets more political as decarbonization of energy becomes more critically important in our economic and ecological survival. It's true around the world, and it's certainly what we're seeing in Australia at the moment. There is an extraordinary amount, as Susan said, happening in the area of energy policy in the moment in Australia. And really what I'm going to talk about is just a focus on renewable and sustainable energy, and that doesn't even touch on some of the issues around gas, for example. But the government has made good on its promise to repeal the carbon price, and they've also said they're planning to abolish the Climate Change Authority. The federal budget announced the axing of the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, ARENA, but ARENA is now a political football, and we don't know if they will survive or if they'll just be strangled out of existence, but they're certainly under threat. The coalition went to the election with a policy of 1 million solar roofs, but there's no evidence of that anywhere, so we can pretty much safely assume that's gone. So we're left with direct action, which includes Abbott's Green Army and the Emissions Reduction Fund, and there's certainly a question mark over the coalition's ability to get that through the Senate. More on that in a moment. We're getting a federal energy white paper, which promises to be a coherent and integrated approach to energy policy. The Clean Energy Finance Corporation, which is a $10 billion green investment bank, looks safe for the time being, which is good. And as Susan said, the renewable energy target is under threat as well, which is pretty much the last remaining support structure for clean energy in Australia. So although energy policy shouldn't be political, it should be long-term, and it should ideally be bi- and tripartisan, particularly given the long life of energy assets. It's anything but that at the moment. It's subject to the short-termism of the political cycle, and the only constant is, as you guessed, change. So in Australia, at the moment, this man, Clive Palmer, and his Palmer United MPs might be the difference. Changes to the renewable energy target, the remaining bits of the Clean Energy Future package, and direct action ought to be made through legislation on some level. And Clive is certainly making handy use of this moment with quite a bit of political wheeling and dealing. I, for one, thought the Al Gore moment was absolutely jaw-dropping. But in the end, if he and his MPs choose to vote with Greens and Labour, and a few of the independent crossbenchers, well, the coalition is in a very, very interesting position. But that's a very big if. And I haven't spoken to anyone yet in the industry who's happy that clean energy and the fate of it sits in this man's hands. So the result in the meantime is complete uncertainty. And that uncertainty, as I'm sure some of my colleagues will talk about, is slowing investment in all types of energy, and particularly renewables. Australia is viewed as a risky policy environment for investment. Big renewable developers like First Solar and Acciona have very publicly stated that they're reconsidering investments in Australia, although there is a glimmer of hope for the rent now, which is positive. Other renewable energy companies like Marine Energy are looking quite actively at taking their technologies offshore, like Scotland, where there's more support. So how do you craft an advocacy strategy in the midst of all this? Well, the policy frameworks are precarious at best, but there are some certainties still in the way that businesses and markets operate. And to tap into those, I think it's really important to look at the drivers of change, and those are the foundations to use to build strategy. So the first reality is that sustainable energy technology continues in its inexorable march forward, making it an ever more economic option. The falling cost of technology and increasingly realistic options for battery storage, overlaid with the unbelievable renewable resource we have in this country, mean that the future of distributed energy is assured, really, pretty much regardless of policy intervention. We know, for example, that quality wind projects can be built for less than new coal projects, and that most of the major banks have said they won't go near financing new coal-fired generation. And nowhere can this reducing cost curve for technology be seen more dramatically than the solar PV experience curve, which this slide shows, that PV module prices have fallen well more than 80% since 2008. This is actually a little bit old now. Add storage, energy storage to the mix, and you have a formidable combination, of course. Battery storage is the holy grail for renewables, and it's already here, and the costs are just going to continue to drop as demand grows. This slide from the investment bank UBS shows that the cost of going completely off-grid, I have 2 minutes left? Right, okay, I'm gonna have to go really fast. The cost of going off-grid for an average Sydney household will be competitive very shortly with staying on-grid. And this is already a reality for remote communities. The shift to renewables is absolutely inevitable. So the first kind of strategic reality is that technology will prevail. And the second reality, which I now will be very brief on, considering my colleagues will talk about it more in more detail, is that people everywhere really like renewable energy, and they want a whole lot more control over their energy choices. Some people have called this the democratization of energy or the emergence of the energy prosumer, and it's an extremely important trend. So mums and dads are getting a lot more involved in their day-to-day energy use, how much they pay for it, where they get it, how to reduce their bills. And this just shows the uptake of solar PV. So in Australia, 1.5 million households now have spent over $10 billion of their own money and put approximately 3.5 gigawatts of PV on rooftops in this country. So that consumer centricity is going to be a big driver of change. This is the graph in WA. It shows what the forecast for Western Australia PV installations are, according to our independent market operator. We currently have between 370 and 380 megawatts of rooftop PV in WA, which, to put it in perspective, is bigger than our largest conventional generator. And under the IMO's expected case, we'll have over a megawatt by 2023. So it's just a no-brainer. It does go beyond PV as well with the energy prosumer. So around the world, people are adopting things like technologies like electric vehicles, energy efficient building materials, and so on. And so the certainty, or I guess the opportunity, is to tap into this energy prosumer to do things like spread load evenly, manage that growth in peak demand, avoid spending more on poles and wires. And our WA consumers are a powerful lot, as we saw this time last year with the solar feed-in tariff changes. So the last reality, although some would maybe suggest it's not happening, is inextricably linked to the first two, and that's that utilities around the world are facing a Kodak moment. So to use that analogy, the age of film photography didn't end because the world ran out of film, and it didn't end because they ran out of the components to make the cameras. It was destroyed by the disruptive nature of technology in the form of rapid improvements in digital imaging. And the same thing is happening to the utilities. They can resist and try to buy time, or they can work out how to profit from it. And this is really what we talk about as the death spiral. So we talk about more renewable energy means less power is purchased from energy retailers, which means less money goes to the network operator, which means fewer people are paying for the grid, and the fixed costs of all of that electricity infrastructure have to be spread over a smaller group. Capacity factors for fossil fuel plants come down, wholesale electricity prices drop, and battery storage is coming. So the combination of those things mean that people will, and already have, started disconnecting, and that's the death spiral. In WA, there are some hints of this, and because our utilities are 100% state-owned, it's the Premier's problem, and there we are, we're back to politics. So I won't go into a lot of detail about the WA scenario. I'll be happy to talk about it more in questions and answers, but the WA is in a very difficult position with this. And they're trying to cut costs as a result and looking under every couch cushion to try to find money. So these are the strategic realities, and we believe you have to base advocacy and strategy on them. So policy and politics will come and go, but understanding these dynamics allow us to provide workable solutions to business, to government, to community, to further the aim, which is to accelerate that transition to the new economy. And there is a way forward, we believe, and it does include the utilities, and it does include the grid. Western Australia enjoys some of the best renewable resource in the world and some of the highest penetration rates of PV in the country, and that's a very good place to start. So the fact that we're a small and isolated grid gives us the ability to try new things, and Horizon and Western Power are doing that in places. They could probably do a bit more, but they're starting to. But we need a vision for the future of the network, and we need to acknowledge that it's no longer a natural monopoly. We need to align prices with costs, which they're not in this state, because that's a major barrier. We need to empower that energy prosumer with choice and information, like transparent and sophisticated tariffs. And we need to embrace new technology and its disruptive business models, if for no other reason, because trying to stop it is absolutely fruitless. And we need to revise regulatory structures, because if they aren't changed, it will lead to an outcome that no one wants. Now, I'm not saying these changes will be easy, and there will definitely be winners and there will be losers. But in the next few years, we have to turn some of these challenges into opportunities and solutions, particularly in Western Australia. So the orthodoxy that Michael Lieberich spoke of utilities and regulators, fundamentally do have a choice here and in Australia and around the world as to whether they embrace this transformation or they stick their head in the sand. And our role, SEA's role in the coming years, and I would argue many of you in this room as well, is to do what you can to accelerate that transition. That's it. Thanks very much.